All right, guys, what's up, man? G Funk is back, and I'm ready to talk something a little off topic today. As you can tell by the title, this is not going to be a boxing video. This is going to be a video about pro wrestling and what I think, in my opinion, is the best character change in my opinion. Check the audio real quick. All right. It's like I'm good. Okay. Always gotta check the audio, man. Make sure everything's good. You just never know. But yeah, man. Before I get into what I think is the best character change in pro wrestling, in my opinion, I want to give a little bit of background here on my pro wrestling days. Um, as you guys all know, I grew up in the '80s, and I've been watching wrestling ever since I can remember. Same with boxing. I kind of shared a little bit of my history last night on D Style's show about how I became a boxing fan. So it's pretty much the same with wrestling. I mean, back then, you had a good percentage of people that believed wrestling was the real deal, pro wrestling, that is. Um, so there was a lot of people that were really into pro wrestling at the time. My dad was a big pro wrestling fan ever since he was young. He would go to the what he would describe to me as he would go down to the TV station here, the local station, Channel 40, and would watch Big Time Wrestling was what it was called. I guess that was the territory that was around here in Northern California at the time was big Big Time Wrestling, and they would come here, and have a show, and he would watch. Him and his friends would go. Um, Before we had a big arena here in Sacramento, we had what was called the Memorial Auditorium, which it's been around for a long, long time. My grandfather told me about going to dances there back in like the '50s, um, and that's where they would have the bigger pro wrestling, like when WWF was starting to become a big, big wrestling promotion. Um, they would go there first before we had one Arco Arena, which was, I think it held maybe about 10,000 people, and that was more of a temporary building. It was there for about 2 seasons for the Sacramento Kings, and then we had the second Arco Arena, which was there for a really long time, 20 plus years, I want to say. So that's where the wrestling would go there, and he would watch, and then his love for wrestling became my love for wrestling because as a young kid, we would watch it together. I got a lot of VHS tapes, the VHS Classic series that I do here on my channel. I show a lot of old boxing that I had. Also got a lot of old pro wrestling, mainly from my dad. And then as I got older, I started to watch and record myself. But from a young kid, I want to say all the way to about '93 was when I stopped watching pro wrestling for a little bit. Um, and it wasn't by choice. It was because you know they started to do more shows on cable television. When I was really young, from I want to say the ages of like 4 to like 7, um, wrestling would come on 2 times a week on like regular channels. Like I want to say out here in Sacramento was channel 31, and I can't remember the other channel that came on. And then every now and then there would be a Saturday night's main event, which came on NBC. Um, but there was Wrestling Challenge, and then there was Superstars of Wrestling that would come on, and then my dad taped hit me out of those wrestling shows on tape, and it wasn't around, I think, '93. They had the Royal Rumble here at Arco Arena, which was kind of cool. I'll probably do a video about that because I was there. I was at that Royal Rumble. Um, while the boxing is at a stall, at a halt right now. I'll probably end up doing more pro wrestling videos, and I'm gonna do a video about that there because that was a pretty cool experience there, being at that Royal Rumble. Um, so yeah, '93 was when they first started to do the Monday Night Raw series, and at the time, we couldn't afford to get cable and watch on the USA Network. So, right then and there was the end of it for me for a couple years. The only time I was able to watch Monday Night Raw was one's house, or like a relative's house, and I would put it on and anything, and then I could change the channel and watch Monday Night Raw. But it was, you know, very few and far between, man, that I would be able to watch episodes of Raw. It wasn't until about '96, I want to say, when my mom uh, got a basic cable package, and then I was able to start watching again Monday Night Raw, and then there was Monday Nitro. I remember I first discovered WCW Saturday Night would come on. That was on, I believe, TBS on Saturdays, and then all of a sudden there was Monday Night Raw and Monday Night Nitro. WCW Monday Nitro would come on, and then right from there was when I got right back into it. And then from about '96 to, I want to say, maybe like 2001, I was, full fledged back into it, watching every week, keeping up with the storylines on both, and ECW also. And then once uh, WCW went under, was when I kind of lost interest. It just kind of got watered down for me a little bit. Now uh, there was good wrestling going on at the time, but for me, I don't know, man. It just wasn't the same from there. I haven't been able to watch WWE now, is what it's called. Back then, it was WWF, but WWE, man, it's really hard to watch, man. The last time I watched a full episode of Raw was, I want to say, maybe a year or two ago, when they had the 25-year anniversary for Raw, and then Stone Cold came back, and then they had a bunch of old wrestlers from back then on the show. That was really the only thing that interested me, was that the wrestlers from when I was a kid were back on the show, and I from that point on, I really tried to watch uh Raw and SmackDown, but it's just, man, it's really hard to watch now, man. I've been watching more of the AEW, which I think is really, really good, man. I think that the quality of the matches, and it's just much better, man. I think the storylines are better too. But that's another video. So now I want to talk about, again, character changes. Now, for those of you that don't really know much about pro wrestling, basically what I mean by character change is, you'll have a wrestler who will come out and he will play this character. And whether it be, now, when I was a kid, '80s and '90s, early '90s, it was, this is what we called it, you were either a good guy or a bad guy. Um, as years went on, and some of the business got exposed, it was, you're either a heel or a baby face. The heel was the villain, and the baby face was the hero of the day. Um, so there's been a lot of good character changes over the years, man. I want to name a few before I go into what I think is actually the best. Um, Andre the Giant, obviously, in the late '80s, went from the guy who was, the big gentle giant, for most people. He was always a baby face ever since I can remember, and he was always there to help out in bad situations. He'd be the guy to come out and help out, especially Hulk Hogan in the mid '80s. If Hogan was in there and he was getting attacked by a couple of heels, or 3-4 heels, here comes Andre, or be a few other guys. But um, his change from babyface to heel in the build up for WrestleMania 3 was very, very good. That helped pack that stadium, Pontiac Silverdome. They had not over 93,000 people there to see Hulk versus Andre the Giant, and it was because of that heel, that character change, the change from babyface to heel for Andre the Giant is what really did it, for a lot of people. Randy Savage, Macho Man Randy Savage. He had quite a few changes. They weren't necessarily, I mean, too big. I mean, he just went from because I don't know, man. To me, Macho Man was always kind of like a heel to me, and it was just because the way he would treat Elizabeth, talk to Elizabeth, people didn't like that. Even when he was a quote unquote face, he still would treat her the same. But when he went from just the Macho Man Randy Savage to the Macho King, and he ended up, he didn't have Miss Elizabeth no more. He had Sensational Sherry with him. I thought that was kind of a cool character change at the time. And then obviously, Hulk Hogan, 95, I want to say, was it 95 or 96? I believe it was early 96, I want to say, when he went from, this is when he was on WCW. He went from being, the regular yellow and red Hulkster, the Hulkster brother, say your prayers, eat your vitamins. That Hulk Hogan to Hollywood Hulk Hogan in the NWO. I think that was a good change. I think it was a much needed change for him. People were just getting sick and tired of the same old thing from Hogan at that time, and I think that was a much needed change for him. But in my opinion, it's not the best, man, that I've seen. Hogan got a lot of heat for that, from the fans. He went from, again, the hero to the villain right away. He's in there. You fans can stick it, brother. That night that he made the initial switch. Um, but the reason why I'm going to go with somebody else is because for me was a brilliant change, and the storyline that went with it was, to me, was just genius, man. I really, really liked what happened with this guy and what they did for him, because he had been kind of like Hogan in a way. He kind of had the same image for such a long time. Was always kind of in the same role forever and ever, and he had a character change that just kind of blew people away, and he got over big time, man, with this character change, and he didn't even have to say a word, and he was over with the fans. Like, the fans were, they loved it, and I just think that, in a way, just like Hogan, it was time to make a change for this character. Now you guys are probably thinking, well, who's this character you talking about? Who's this guy? I'm going to say, in the fall of 96 in WCW, the character change of Sting, in my opinion, was the best change of a character in pro wrestling history, man, in my opinion. This guy, I mean, he went from this. Let me share my screen for you guys real quick here. But Sting was, the big, muscular, blonde hair, spiky hair, face paint dude. I'm gonna show you guys a picture of Sting right now from when I remember him, and as long as I can remember, he's always been a face. I know he had a couple of heel runs. I know he was with the Four Horsemen for a little bit, and they were always like a heel group. So here we go right here. This is how I remember Sting when I was a kid. Always had that look right there. The spiky, bleached blonde hair, the face paint, the scorpion on the tights. This was a good character, man. For a long time, he was a big fan favorite for a long time. He was with WCW pretty much his whole career until recently. Um, Before that, he was a heel in a promotion in a territory called UWF, which was the Universal Wrestling Federation, and he was a heel there. And he when he went to or when that company went under and it went to NWA, which was Jim Crockett Promotions, he was a face, I think, pretty much the whole time, except for when he was in the Four Horsemen. And he wasn't even in the Four Horsemen for a long time. He was, he was there for a little bit. Then he ended up getting a shot. He was like the number one contender for Ric Flair's title. Ric Flair was a champion at the time, and they told him, you better turn down that opportunity for the belt, or we're kicking you out. And then they ended up kicking him out, and then he became a baby face. But this is the way I remember Sting right here, man. He was like this. And then, like I said, I had to stop watching wrestling for a little bit because of, we didn't have cable access at the time in my house. So I couldn't watch wrestling. So by the time those, a couple years went by and I started watching again, he was looking like this. By the time I started watching WCW again, this is what he looked like. Not too big of a change here. He still has the same kind of face paint, still kind of the same character, but he's not bleaching his hair no more. He doesn't have his spiky hair anymore, but he's still the same old Sting right here. Now I remember the storyline here when I first started to pick it up again with WCW. And at the time I started watching, it was like, I want to say late summer of '96. And I remember putting it on and I started watching and, watching Monday Nitros with a few guys I didn't know. So I had to start to get to know some of these newer characters. But the guys that I recognized were there. I remember they kept saying that Sting and Lex Luger, they want to have a meeting with Ric Flair and Arn Anderson. It was like a big, 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 big thing. And then all throughout the show, they kept showing Hogan with Kevin Nash. And when I seen that, I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, these dudes, Razor Ramon and Diesel, they're over there at WCW now with Hulk Hogan, and so that automatically got us, right back into it. But I remember Sting was like, he was basically wanted to set up a meeting with Flair and Arn Anderson and Lex Luger. Him and Luger, I guess, were a tag team at the time, and it was basically the war was on between WCW and NWO. So he was saying like, obviously we don't like each other and blah blah blah, but we should come together and fight these guys at the War Games and take WCW back from these dudes. So I remember, the build up. It looked like Sting was having second thoughts on doing what he's doing. They actually had a fake Sting. The NWO made a fake Sting. Looked like he was turning on Lex Luger. It was a little bit weird. Unfortunately, came up. I was really looking forward to seeing it, but couldn't afford the pay-per-view, so I had to wait till Nitro to come on to see what happened. And now that I know what happened, it's just weird. I guess what happened was Sting was like, he wasn't around. They couldn't find him. The match started, and then he comes up out of nowhere, um, and ends up doing he puts a move on somebody. Then he walks out of the ring, and he's like, "Is that good enough for you?" or something like that to Lex Luger, because they were like, we can't trust Sting. So he went in there, put somebody down, and then got out of there. And then he was real mysterious with what he was doing at the time. And then I just remember, I kept watching to see what's going on. Everybody's like, we don't know what's going on with Sting. And then next thing you know, he started looking like this, you know? And he wasn't even wrestling, man. He wasn't doing anything. He was just there, Um, he would just be hanging out in the crowd, um, in the rafters of these arenas, just kind of standing there. He didn't have the bat at first. He didn't have the bat. He just kind of just stood there looking. And I remember they just kept showing like certain matches would be on, and the next thing you know, they're like, "Well, there he is. There's Sting." They don't know what he's doing. He did this for, I want to say, like maybe like over a year. He just would show up. I think actually he did come in the ring when they had that fake Sting, and he hit him with the Scorpion Death Drop, and then he did say something with, I guess the NWO was trying to recruit him, and he was like, "Sting is, you never know." And then he just walked out of the ring. But he did have like just the all white kind of face paint and the leather coat. Um, I guess now that when I did a little research on it, I guess he was over there in All Japan Pro Wrestling for a little bit, and then he came back here, and then they decided to do this Crow character, the movie Crow, Brandon with Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son. I guess it was Scott Hall's idea to turn him like that. He goes, you already got kind of the hair, just let your hair grow out, paint your face like this, and then you'll look like the Crow, and um, the reason why I think this was the best character change, in my opinion, is because um, he didn't have to say a word, man. Like I'm telling you, for over a year, I want to say it was like 14 months or something like that. He never cut a promo. He didn't even have a damn match with anybody. He would just, you know, spontaneously and hit somebody with a bat or something, like but like he didn't have a match, he didn't have a promo in over a year. And the fans were just absolutely in love with this guy, with the new look, with the way he was approaching things, and they made him the guy to take on Hogan at Starrcade '97 for the belt. And I guess I could talk a little bit about that, but to me, that's what made it the best character changes because, again, this guy was like, I mean, the NWO was popular as can be at the time. Um, they kind of took over everything in WCW. And I mean, everywhere you went, anytime you watched Nitro or Thunder, whatever it was, you see nothing but NWO t-shirts everywhere. I mean, they were the shit, man. I had an NWO t-shirt. They were cool, man. They kind of had that thuggish, gangsterish kind of thing about them, that kind of appealed to people at the time. Like I guess people were just kind of tired of the same old with wrestling. It wasn't the classy face versus heel thing. Like the heels were the ones that were kind of getting over. And the guys who were the baby faces were, nobody really liked them anymore like they used to. Um, but man, it was pretty cool how this guy just did a character change. And again, not one promo, not one match. And he was, over, just completely over with the fans. Even more than Hogan, I believe, at the time in the NWO. Now, the build up to Starrcade, was that Sting was the guy who always, he was always WCW from the beginning till now, and he's going to be the guy to take the belt back from Hogan. A couple guys had already tried to get the belt from him. I think Piper was the guy in Starrcade before. Like Starrcade was like WCW's WrestleMania. That was like their, and the lead up was cool. Apparently, according to Eric Bischoff, Sting was like he was kind of living vicariously through this character. They said he was like real quiet, like real dark at the time, almost like what you see here on the screen. He, I guess I said he was like living that life for real. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they said he might have had some kind of like personal issues going on at the time, but he was living this character outside of the ring also. And Bischoff said that I guess he really wasn't in top shape. I remember reading something about him saying like this guy he didn't even show up to get a spray tan before he went out there to wrestle Hogan that night. Um, they WCW, man, they fucked that main event up bad. I mean, really bad. So apparently, what was supposed to happen was this: a month before Starcade, we had what was called the infamous Montreal screw job between Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and Vince McMahon over in WWF. You know, um, Bret Hart was supposed to. They're supposed to when he fought Shawn Michaels that night in Canada, in Montreal, Canada, in his home country. It was supposed to lead to a disqualification, and then the next night, Bret Hart was going to hand over the belt and just walk away, and then he was going to make his WCW debut because he had already signed to go to WCW. Nobody knew at the time, at least none of the fans knew. And so what happened was Vince didn't trust him, I guess, and he decided to, as soon as Shawn Michaels put him in the sharpshooter, ring the bell. They took the belt, you know. So apparently, what Bischoff was trying to do was, since he had just signed Bret Hart, who was the number one guy over there at WWF, he came over and made Bret Hart I guess the enforcer, whatever that means, the special guest enforcer in the main event between Sting and Hogan. And so here's what the finish is supposed to be. I guess they're supposed to go back and forth, Hogan and Sting, and Hogan was to drop the big leg, and he's supposed to get a fast count from Nick Patrick, who was the referee. So here's where everything fucked up, right? They're saying that Hogan. A lot of rumors going on. People saying that Hogan paid off Nick Patrick to count normal when, from Sting's understanding, it was supposed to be a fast 3 count. So he wasn't going to kick out because it's supposed to be a quick count. Apparently, some people say that Hogan paid off Nick Patrick to not slow their count to make it look like he won. Like, he didn't want to put Sting over. He didn't want to put the belt on Sting. So I don't know, man. But in my opinion, I think Nick Patrick was the worst guy for the job that night because he always had such a weird count. The way that he would do his count, like anytime like he would be a referee in a match. Like he would do this like weird like he would hit the mat go 1 and he would do this like weird like hand jiggle and then do 2 and then do another weird hand jiggle and then do 3. Like it was just like it would almost be like it would be the weirdest thing ever to see him do a fast 3 count. So apparently that's what happened. Sting was under the impression it was going to be a fast 3 count, and Hogan apparently paid Nick Patrick off to not do a fast 3 count and just do a regular count, and then he would win. And that's exactly what it looked like. If you go back and watch the end of that match, you'll see Hogan drops the big leg, goes over for the count, lifts the leg up. Nick Patrick, 1, 2, 3, regular count. The match is over. The match is done. And Bret Hart gets up and he's like, "This is not going to happen again." It's kind of referring to the screw job that just happened to him. So he grabs goes over to the guy who's supposed to ring the bell. Stops him from ringing the bell. Grabs Nick Patrick. He says, "Look, you did a fast count." He's clapping and saying, "You did a fast count." When it really wasn't a fast count. Throws him back in the ring. The match starts over again. I believe Sting starts, to go to work on Hogan, hits him with a splash in the corner, puts him in the Scorpion Deathlock and gets the win. And then that's how it ended. And then the next night they had to wrestle again for the belt because of all the controversy. But man, they really screwed that thing up, man. They really should have just put the strap on Sting without the controversy, I think. but they wanted to create that controversy because of the Bret Hart situation. They were taking shots at WWF and Vince McMahon. So, yeah, man. From that point on, Sting was back active again. I believe they had a rematch for the belt at Super Brawl, which was in February, I think, was when they do Super Brawl in WCW at the time. But they really messed that up, man. I think that, you know, but anyway, that's my take here on what I think is the best character change in pro wrestling. Sting's character change to the Crow was the best, man, in my opinion. Um, but they did mess up his comeback with Hogan. You know, in the match that he had with Hogan, they should have just I don't know, man. They should have had a different referee if they wanted to do the fast count thing. But I see I got my boy No Paul here in the house, and he's laughing at me. No Paul always laughing at me, bro. What's up, man? He says, Conan, was that your favorite? Yeah, he was in the NWO for a little bit. He was a good wrestler, though, man. He says, Hart spit in. Oh, McMahon's. Yeah, he did. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of people that think that that was scripted too, man. I know that, you know, it looked like a real altercation that happened that night with Hart, Bret Hart, and Vince. But some people think it was just too perfect, man. Like, you know, like all of a sudden the camera's on him and then he spits in McMahon's face and then boom, they zoom in on his face and everything like that. Um, and then for Bret Hart to do the WCW signal that he did while they were still on air on a pay per view, the Survivor Series. You know, there's a lot of people say like, you know, that would never be allowed to happen. Like they would never allow that to be on camera for him to put up WCW the way he did. He literally spelled out WCW with his hand, you know, like saying, you know, I'm going to WCW. I'm out of here. They screwed me over. You know, a lot of theories out there on a lot of wrestling topics, man. Which is why I'm gonna start doing more videos on wrestling. Um, but it's it's fun, man, to go back and revisit these memories. I really enjoyed wrestling at this time, the mid '90s. It was really cool, man. Especially like I say with the NWO. You know, they kind of changed the game, man. It was cool. You know, then you had WWF start to make their little groups. You know, they had like um, DX. They had the Nation of Domination. They had quite a few groups. I remember they had Los Boricuas. It was a bunch of Puerto Rican wrestlers, Savio Vega and a few other guys. You know, No Paul says, "Yeah, I'm not sure what to believe, but you can't leave with the belt like that." No, you know, I don't think he was trying to. He just, you know, he just wanted to. The problem was this, from what I hear, when that last contract that Vince McMahon signed, or that he gave to Bret Hart had control over his character. It was in the contract. So anything that went on with him and a storyline and his character, he had you know, he was able to say yes or no. And Vince, you know, you know, Vince wanted him obviously to lose so that they could have the belt because he didn't want Bret to take the belt over to WCW and give it to Eric Bischoff. Um, you know, he wanted to make sure that that belt stayed, but then Bret Hart was saying that, you know, since I have control over my character, you know, I want my character to go out in a clean way. You know, I don't want it to be some weird, you know, shady stuff, especially in front of my home country fans, you know. So, you know, McMahon kind of screwed up himself there with giving him that much power of his character, you know. If he didn't give him that, he could have just said, "Look, man, this is what's going to happen and that's that." You know, you're going to give the strap over to Sean and then you're going to go to WCW, you know? But that's not what happened. You know, the famous Montreal screw job happened Another character change that I want to mention before I go here is Rocky Maivia to The Rock was a very good character change too. Um, for those of you that remember, Rocky Maivia was The Rock before he became The Rock. Um, he had this goofy outfit where he had these like he would come out with this like kind of long hair and he wore this like these like almost looked like Jeff Jarrett. He had these like straps going down across his chest and you know it was just a weird thing. He was supposed to be like a blue chip athlete, a blue chip guy, his grandfather and his father both wrestlers, so he's a third generation wrestler. And like I remember they show these highlight packages of him training uh wrestling and stuff like that, but people just did not like that character, man. They did not like that character for some reason, and they would boo the hell out of him. I remember watching shows and they'd be saying "Die, Rocky, die," They just didn't like that character, so they ended up um, switching him over, and then he went to join the Nation of Domination with Farouk. I think at the time was Ahmed Johnson was in that group at the time. I'm not sure if D'Lo Brown was there. I know Kama was there, who later became the Godfather. Um, and I don't know who else was there at the time. The Nation was still real. All these groups were still kind of young then, so they weren't the way that most people remembered them. But yeah, he ended up joining that group. He ended up leaving after a while. I think Farouk ended up leaving first, and the group was kind of dismantled from there. But yeah, that was one of the best character changes too, because I mean he didn't get over right away like Sting did, but eventually he did, and he became the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. Yes, that's good stuff, no Paul. Um, I miss those days, but I didn't know you was a wrestling fan though, man. If I'd have known that, I would have had you on. Maybe next time you could join me here. We could talk some pro wrestling. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of things that we could talk about in wrestling. A lot of topics, especially now that boxing is there's nothing going on with boxing. Yeah, the people's elbow, the people's eyebrow, the people's pie, the people's everything. Yeah, man. Um, but that's one of the best for sure. Rocky Maivia to The Rock. Um, Another one that I want to mention. Now, this might not be an actual character change, but for me, it is. Like right around the time that Montreal screw job happened, Vince McMahon was becoming more of a character himself. Um, in the storyline, Jabroni. um, I remember when I was a kid, always hearing Vince McMahon being just a commentator, and then like all of a sudden I hear, nah, Vince is the owner, man. Like he owns WWF and all that type of shit. So like, um, around that time, he kind of became Mr. McMahon in a way, like he was the owner. You didn't really hear him commentating as much anymore. And then, immediately after the Montreal screw job happened, he came on Raw to kind of explain to the fans what happened, and he was like, he kind of went over the history of wrestling on how things happen. Like when a guy goes from one territory to another, he always goes out, losing. He's always going to put somebody else over and put the strap on somebody else. So he kind of broke it down like that, and then he was like, Bret, his infamous speech, Bret screwed Bret. I didn't screw Bret. Bret screwed Bret because he knew the deal, and I'm sure he knew the deal, but again, at the same time, he had control over his character, so you know, can't really complain. But McMahon, from being like the commentator slash owner, and then he became the character Mr. McMahon, where he was always out there. He was a heel for a long time. So his character changed from just being a commentator to being Mr. McMahon, the owner WWF and the walk, the way he move his arms, and the No Chance in Hell, No Chance in Hell theme music he would walk out to. That was really kind of the birth, I guess, of that Mr. McMahon character right there. So he went from just again being a commentator to the owner, Mr. McMahon, and doing whatever he wanted to do or whatever he could do. Him and Stone Cold, boy, they had some great promos, man. Back in I want to say '98 was when it kind of started, in the build up to WrestleMania 14. Great stuff, man, right there. I remember watching all that shit, man. Let's see. They weren't always at the Arc Arena in the Tito Santana days. Yeah. They were at the Memorial Auditorium, bro. That was downtown Sacramento. We got the Golden One downtown Sacramento now. But it's still there, man. They still have shows there. The Memorial Auditorium. That thing has been there since, man, I don't know what year they built that, but it's pretty ancient, dude. Like if you see it, if you see a picture of the Memorial Auditorium here in Sacramento, from the outside, you would think it was some old courthouse building or something. It doesn't look like a place where you would see shows or anything like that. And you walk in, you see all the old drawings and all the old carvings on the walls and stuff. And I want to say it was built maybe the 1920s or something like that. It's a really old building, man. You walk in, you see seats, not a whole lot of seats. You have a lower bowl, you have an upper bowl, and then you have hardwood floor. Because I guess there's a lot of concerts there back in the day, a lot of dances. Then you have a stage. You see plays and stuff like that there way back in the day. And that's where they had wrestling, man. My dad would tell me about it all the time. I actually seen a couple of independent wrestling shows there. I remember watching. It was advertised in the Sacramento Bee here. They had it. I forget the name of the promotion, but we went there, and the headliners were the Honky Tonk Man. I want to say this is probably 97, 98, something like that. It was the Honky Tonk Man versus Jake the Snake Roberts. And then the main event was Dan Severn, who was, the UFC fighter. He was a pro wrestler for a little bit. Dan Severn versus Bam Bam Bigelow. That match was actually pretty good. And he got cheated, and I remember he got mad, and he walked through the crowd. I remember he was walking through the crowd right in our section, and I walked over to him, and he just kept looking at all the kids. He was like, I got robbed. Did you guys see that? I got robbed. He was in character, but he was a pretty good actor for just being a wrestler from the UFC to be a pro wrestler. You got to have some kind of acting skills and play the crowd, when you do that. But Jake the Snake, man, Jesus, this guy. Let me tell you, man, Honky Tonk came out. Now, he was out of shape. He had a little belly on him. He wasn't in the greatest shape. He was getting old. But he still had on, he still had the Elvis hair, was combed immaculately like always, had the sideburns going, had the suit, the sparkly suit he would always wear, the guitar. He was in full character. And this guy, Jake the Snake, comes out. I mean, he has a snake, right? But I'm telling you, man, this dude comes out in sweatpants and some busted ass Nikes, bro. Busted ass Nikes. I'm looking like this guy ain't ready to wrestle. And the match was shitty as ever. He ended up getting the win and, pulled the snake out like he always does. But it come to find out, they had that documentary, the Behind the Mat documentary, and he was on drugs, man. He was on crack, smoking meth. I mean, all kind of shit he was doing at the time. So that kind of explained it for me, because I just remember telling my dad, what's up with this fool, Jake the Snake? Come out here, ain't even got the snake boots on, no tights, nothing. He came out in sweatpants and some Nikes, bro. Then I don't even know what kind of Nikes they were, but they weren't wrestling shoes, that's for sure, man. Says Pinche Rick Rude. Rick Rude was a tough guy, man. I hear a lot of stories about him. I hear he was one of those guys that you didn't want to fuck with. He kicked somebody's ass in real life. I guess he used to be like a bouncer or something before he became a pro wrestler. So Like, hey, it was time to get down. He would get down. I heard he beat up Ultimate Warrior in the back one time for doing some punk stuff, you know. But yeah, man, I'm gonna go ahead and end this thing, man. I can't believe we've been on 45 minutes already. I thought it was only gonna be like a 20-minute video. But I start talking about pro wrestling, man, and I could go on all night, man. Share a lot of stories, a lot of memories that I have. But yeah, man, thank you for joining me, No Paul. I know it's late. Maybe some of you guys will check this out after the live's over. Let me know what you guys think about that character's change of Sting. If you think there was any other changes that were better, put them down in the comment section, man. I'm gonna close this thing out. I'm gonna get to bed. Getting a little tired, Been quarantined now for 2 weeks. Don't know when I'm going back to work, so I plan on doing a lot more videos, man, a lot more lives. So, if anybody wants to join me, man, hit me up. Email is gfunky84boxing at gmail.com. Anybody wants to get on any topics, could be boxing related. Obviously, it's a boxing channel. If you want to talk pro wrestling with me, we can talk pro wrestling. Any other sports, NBA, football, NFL, baseball. I'm gonna do a baseball video here real soon, man. I'm gonna do my team of the decade, the last decade, which was my San Francisco Giants. You know what I'm saying? We were the best team of that decade. We won 3 World Series. So I'm gonna be doing a live about that real soon. Hey man, gotta try to make the best of this situation we got going on here, man. And I hope that everybody out there is being safe and taking all the proper precautions necessary, man, so that you guys can be healthy and we can get back to our normal shit, man. But yeah, man, thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for being here, No Paul. I'll check you guys out on the next one, man. I'm out.